1,500 people, different age ranges, all felt fine. They ran them through MRIs, and they found that 78% of them had ruptured or herniated discs
Yeah.
in the spine, but no pain.
Mm.
And so it made them say, hey, we got to relook at this. Something's not right here because we've always been taught that the ruptured disc is the source, right? That's the pain. And
Mm.
all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, why aren't they hurting right now? There must be another facet to it. So they had to
Mm.
start looking because your treatment of that condition then has to change.
Yeah. Welcome to Beyond the Pain, the podcast that explores what it really takes to break free from chronic pain and reclaim your life. I'm your host, Lee Brandon, and someone who's spent over 2 decades helping people get to the root cause of pain that no one else could explain. Whether you're dealing with long-term back issues, joint pain, nerve discomfort, or mysterious symptoms that just won't go away, this show is here to help you go deeper. Because beyond the pain, there's clarity, strength, and power waiting for you. Each week, we'll uncover the physical, emotional, biochemical, and energetic causes of pain and how to transform them. Let's dive deep into this week's episode. Today, we're diving into a conversation that I really think will shift the way you see chronic pain and the body's ability to heal. My guest is Dr. Sean McCaffrey, a practitioner with an incredible story. He originally set out to become a lawyer, but life had other plans for him, leading him into the world of healing, nutrition, emotional work, and the deeper mechanisms that drive chronic pain. What I love about Sean is his ability to simplify the complexity of pain without dismissing just how multifactorial it really is. In this episode, we explore the mechanical, emotional, and nutritional sides of pain, the impacts of toxicity and inflammation, and how fasting and nutrition can completely change someone's health, and the fascinating role the subconscious mind plays in both turning pain on and turning it off. And of course, Sean shares some amazing real-world stories from his practice that really show what's possible when we stop chasing symptoms and start addressing true root causes. So settle in, this is a powerful one. Sean, welcome to Beyond the Pain. It's great to have you on the show.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you here. So I always like to start at the beginning with my guests. So could you take us through your own journey? What happened in your life or your health that steered you towards helping people with chronic pain?
Yeah, I was fortunate in that it was in my family already. My grandfather and my great uncle, his brother, both were physicians. One was natural healing through chiropractic and naturopathy. The other one was a medical doctor. And so I had both of those in my family. And my uncles, my grandfather's brothers or sons, I'm sorry, John and James, both were also physicians. Well, they both became chiropractors. The one became a naturopath as well. And so I kind of always had it there. It wasn't my journey. My journey was I was going to law school initially. And I ended up getting disgruntled with the whole law thing. I did some probate and divorce and thought, don't want to do this the rest of my life. And so I thought, well, what can I do that would be, engaging and challenging intellectually? And so I thought, oh, I'll go be a medical doctor. And so I enrolled to medical school. And while I was waiting to do the MCATs and all that, I did an internship at a local hospital and I worked in their renal unit. And while I was in their unit, I would just go around and do volunteer work, say hi to people, be just, a door greeter basically. And I had an older gentleman who was there when I my first week there, and I just walk in, "Hey, how you doing?" and all this stuff. And that hospital, when they didn't know what to do with someone, they put him in the renal unit, the kidney unit, and they'd throw him up on that floor. So here's this older gentleman, and he's sitting there. Well, my wife was ill and this and that, and she's here right now, and we're gonna get out. The kids are coming and all this stuff. The family's coming, and that was it. I didn't see him again. I didn't think much about it. Hey, it was great talking to you. I moved on. A month later, I would go and do a around in the hospice care, and he was there.
Mm,
And it really bothered me. And I remember I talked to his nurse at the time and she said, well, his wife passed away the week that I had met him. She didn't make it out
mm,
of the hospital. And he basically lost all hope and ended
mm,
up there too. And I called my uncle up and I said, I can't do this. I can't watch people die, and do nothing about it. I just can't. I
mm.
can't do this. And he said, well, he goes, go be a chiropractor. I said, I don't want to be a chiropractor. I don't want to pop backs and necks and this and that. I don't want to do that. He said, you don't want to do that. He goes, you need to be a healer. He goes, I'll teach you how, but you have to have a license.
Mm,
And so he encouraged me to go. And I had a good GPA coming out of my undergrad. I enrolled, and 3 days later, I was sitting in chiropractic school. And I went through. And my uncle then gave me a list of about 20 people. And he said, you find anyone on this list that's still alive. And it was medical doctors, naturopaths, Ayurveda, TCM, all these different fields. And I found about 11 of them. And one of them, a doctor in the name of Victor Frank, he was an osteopath,
mhm,
tucked me under his wing and said, yes, I knew your grandfather. And we started carrying conversations on.
mm. I've heard of
Between
Victor
him,
Frank, actually.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
great. He was outstanding. Between Vic and my uncle, they kind of steered me along and said, we'll teach you how to open yourself up to really becoming a healer. And that's what I did. That was my path. That was my journey. And I've now been on it for 30 years.
Wow. It's amazing to hear that story. I mean, there's so many of us in this industry that kind of got into it because we had our own issues. And then we kind of went to see someone, they helped us overcome those issues. I want to do that because I want to help other people that went
Yeah.
through the same issue as me. But it's interesting that both you and I didn't go through that process. It was slightly different.
Yeah.
For me, it was just, wow, I've got all this knowledge. I can help people, rather than I went through my own issues much later on, which
Hmm.
my training helped me
Oh,
overcome,
yeah.
but I didn't get into it because of a specific, issue. But yeah, I mean, that's really great to hear. And do you know what happened to the old guy in the hospice?
You know what? He did pass away.
Mm,
He passed away not long after that. And he was pushing 90 to begin
right.
with.
He had a
Uh,
had a
so
good innings,
he,
as we would say.
yeah, yeah, he did pass away, and I got a better love for hospice and what it represents
Mm,
when it's done properly.
mm,
Um, if you get a good hospice care and a good nurse that understands it, their ability to help the family transition through what's going on in that moment and to be there because it's painful,
mm,
right? Emotions are painful.
mm,
And if you don't know how to process them well, or you don't have any experience, you feel lost a lot of times. And so I got a definite different appreciation for hospice, and I can really relate to what you were saying that when I first got into all this, it's like, all right, it's a challenge. I like the excitement of it. I like to problem solve. I have a strong intellectual side. But then I realized to understand yourself and to unpack your own stuff is where the healing actually happens.
mm.
That's a that's a pride swallowing moment, and then it
Yeah,
carries you, so you start healing yourself as well. It's fantastic.
yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, my story. I mean, most of my listeners know my story, but back in 2013, I ruptured my L45 and L5S1 discs. Quite severe radiating pain down my left leg, dropped foot, couldn't walk, couldn't sit, um, couldn't couldn't get socks or shoes on. Luckily, it was in the summer. Um, and up until that point, I'd been rehabilitating people with lumbar spine pathologies for 12 years,
Okay.
very successfully.
Yeah.
And so to go through that experience was interesting because, first of all, I had a lot of knowledge to help myself, but I probably learned more going through the experience than I did in all my training.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, even things like, and again, I've said this a few times on the pod before, but I remember walking down the road when I was living in London at the time. I was walking down the road. Oh, I say I was walking down the road. My right foot was walking. My left foot was being pulled along the road,
Yeah.
um, because I had to get a bus to go and see my GP to get a referral for an MRI. Because I kind of knew that it was my L45 and L5S1. I just wanted to make sure. And,
Uh-huh.
and, and also I want to make sure it wasn't a quarter equina.
Yeah.
Um, But walking down that street, for the first time in my life, I felt vulnerable because I couldn't have defended myself against an 8-year-old girl. I was that weak because I was in so much pain and my body was so unstable. And the one thing I've always had in my back pocket, living in London, it's a city you got to be on your toes, right?
Uh-huh.
You've been there. I've always been a fast runner, like sprinter. Like even now, I'm probably by the time this episode comes out, I'll be 57. I could
Uh-huh.
probably still do a sub 12-second 100 meters.
Yeah,
I've always been quick,
quick.
but walking down my street, or shuffling along, I just saw if someone attacked me now, I can't run. I can't.
Yeah.
I couldn't even attempt to run, let alone try and run. Um, so what that did to me is it really challenged my identity of who I was, and that was a scary thing to go through. And I think that was a big learning for me in terms of when I'm helping other people,
Uh-huh.
because I had this identity of being this fit guy, this health guy, someone that works out and plays tennis, and
Yeah.
you know, and also I work with clients in the gym. I do manual therapy, and I'm thinking, am I ever going to be able to do that again? If I can't do that, who am I?
Yeah.
And that was a really scary experience to go through.
No, it makes complete sense, and it's I understand. I've had back problems myself, off and on throughout the years. I've learned over time that emotions ironically seem to cause most of mine,
Mm,
more so than mechanical traumas. I'm a martial art nut. I've been training since I was 9. I train every morning, 5 to 7 a.m. I have for 40 years. I still do. And I train with guys all over the world now because of this stuff. I can train with guys in Europe and Asia, and it's fascinating.
mm,
But you do get injuries. You get wear and
mm,
tear, and you get stuff like that. And it's interesting that there was some great work that came out of TCU, which is Texas Christian University in the United States. They did some work years ago where they took it was 1,500 people at random off the street, and they went them through a questionnaire. And the only prereq is that you couldn't have any back pain. You had to feel good, or you couldn't do their study.
mm,
So 1,500 people, different age ranges, all felt fine. They ran them through MRIs and they found that 78% of them had ruptured or herniated discs
yeah.
in the spine, but no pain.
Mm,
And so it made them say, hey, we got to relook at this. Something's not right here because we've always been taught that the ruptured disc is the source, right? That's the pain. And it can be
mm,
until it's not. And
mm,
all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, why aren't they miserable? Why aren't they hurting right now? There must be another facet to it. So they had to
mm,
start looking because your treatment of that condition then has to change.
yeah.
All of a sudden you're blocking pain, you're using medications, whatever they were doing at the time, and it wasn't working because they weren't removing the cause.
Mm,
They were chasing the wrong thing. And I always found that fascinating
mm,
when that study was done because it blew my mind. It was
mm,
just like, wow. So it explained to me why sometimes when you're doing a rehabilitative type therapy, that, man, this case, I'm rock starring. It's going great. And I see this one over here that I think is going to be so easy. And it's like, no, I'm not. You're like, whoa, how did it? Because there's many factors to it, right? It's
mm,
a bigger, broader picture. So it makes
yeah.
it kind of fun to be a healer.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the human body is very complex.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I also feel our role as practitioners, clinicians, is to educate the person in a simple way to make it simple. And I think a lot of things are simple, but obviously you need to understand what the root cause of the problem is. So how does your approach help people uncover, the root cause, so to speak?
So a multifactorial. I wrote a book recently called Men Are the Cause of All Disease. And the M, the E, and the N are the acronym part of it. It's mechanical, emotional, nutritional.
Mm,
I work through that triangle on every patient, every patient. So if someone comes to me, regardless of the chief complaint, I'll say, all right, mechanically, is there something that's right in front of me that you can't miss? What's the elephant in the room, right?
mm,
Is it right there? And like, well, I didn't do this. I didn't do this. I just woke up and here it is. So I can say, all right, mechanical is the effect, but not the cause.
Mm.
And so I start then unpacking it a little further. And I say, I work my way around my triangle. I say, all right, let's look at the E, which is the emotional side. It's the one that people I think have the hardest time linking to physical problems. So I
Mm.
always try to, again, make it really understandable, relatable to them. And most people understand that, hey, gosh, Mrs. Smith, if you get really angry, what happens to your blood pressure? She's like, oh my gosh, it goes up.
Mm.
I go, did you go to medical school for that? And she goes, well, no. I go, but you know it, right? And so that's something she can hold on to. Emotions, fear, worry, anger, the body is going to respond to them, right? As though they're a tangible thing, it's going to resist it. That's what it does. That resistance thing can, if it can cause blood pressure to go up, then it can also interfere with other functions. And so I work that around with them, letting them know their thoughts and their habits, their acts that they choose can be a problem for them. The inside of my triangle that I work is the nutritional chemical side. So when my grandfather was practicing, he always referred to it as organic causes of disease, things that get in it or on it, right? All right, nutritional's easy because MEN is kind of funny. MEO, not so much so. So I went with nutritional, but it's what you eat, it's what you drink, it's what we would recognize, your viruses, your parasites, your bacteria, and how they invade the body and then how they respond. And the key to it all is that your body, from my understanding, responds one way and one way only. And it does it the same way in every one that I've met so far. I'm probably 300,000 patient visits into my career. So it's a lot of touches. I've had a
Mm.
lot of hands-on, and this it's never not been there. The body gets stressed by those three things, and it resists it. And depending on how long it's asked to resist it or how suddenly it has to do it, that's how you can literally follow, okay, where's the dysfunction at? And then you learn that you're treating two patients always. You're treating their initial cause and you're trying to pull logs off the fire, but then you also have to treat their effect so they have quality of life.
Mm.
So you're really doing both all the time. And as
Yeah.
you eventually get the cause removed or you get them to see it, then the effect just falls into place because once you get the tension off the body will do its job and it'll usually repair it for itself.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually look at causation from five, I guess it's five, you could say it's four different angles.
Uh-huh.
So one is structural, so structural misalignment. Two, nutritional deficiency.
Uh-huh.
I would say three is toxicity, and that can come from multiple different angles. It could be nutritional, it could be, things like heavy metals,
Uh-huh.
it could be electromagnetic radiation. I class that as a toxin.
Uh-huh.
Um, mental stress, and then emotions,
Yeah.
emotional trauma. So that's where I'm looking at those kind of five aspects, if you like, when it comes to finding the root cause. But whether it's three or whether it's five, we're looking for the same things, right?
Yeah, and they all work together, right? They all symbiotically work together. It's like when I work in my practice, the eliminative systems of the body. If you look at them simplistically, your bowel obviously is involved with that. Kidneys are involved with that. You'll see the lungs, the skin, the sinuses. Sometimes they'll throw the lymph in there. But if you take that from a medical mindset, you've got an EENT doctor looking at the sinus stuff, right? You've got a
Mm.
pulmonologist checking out the lungs. You got a renal guy down there in the kidneys. You probably have an internal medicine looking at toxins and poisons. You have a GI guy. And one of the things that I had a chance to do a talk, I was in New York several years ago at the New York Academy of Medicine, and I used a child shape sorter ball that all little kids do. It used to be red and blue, and it'd have a triangle and a square and a circle, and they'd put them in little holes.
Mm.
Medicine owns the circle, and they own the circle. It is
Mm.
their world. And
Yeah.
if you have a circle problem and you walk into their office, man, it's a home run. Boom, it's out of there. But if you walk in there with the star, or that little half moon or the little weird, trapezoid. You walk it, they're going to take that circle and they're going to go and try and pound it in.
Mm.
It didn't work when you were 3. It doesn't work when you're 30,
Yeah.
right? It's the wrong model. So I really spent my whole career trying to figure out, okay, what are some of these other shapes? What are some of the other shapes that the current healthcare system doesn't really do well with? And can I find ways to help people manage those things? Can I find ways to help them work those shapes? And really, that's what I spent my entire career doing. And I spent a lot of time studying indigenous medicines from
Mm.
across the globe. And in looking at all these different things, because my thinking was that, all right, if the germ theory held up, we'd all be dead. So I'm like, well, it's not completely right, right? It's got some, I understand it, but it's missing a point or two. So I thought, all right, how did all these older cultures survive so we're here today? What did they do well? And when you start looking at what they did, you start seeing a principle running through all the different arts. It doesn't matter if you're studying Ayurveda, acupuncture, Greek healing that they had, the Persians, the Egyptians, the Irish even have an indigenous medicine system that's unique to them.
Mm.
When you start looking at them, there's a common thread running through them all. Once you get where you can see that thread, you can make any healing art work no matter what it is. You can talk to a patient and have the muscle relax. You can touch the patient, have the muscle relax. I can give them a glass of water and have the muscle relax. And you see this in some of the old world things. You saw it in the hypnosis world. You saw it with Mesmer. You saw it with, Elman and all these guys, acupuncture. You see it in all these ways. It's really just connecting to the subconscious that's inside because it's
Mm.
running everything anyway.
Mhm.
You just got to get the conscious mind to
Get
sit
out of
over
the
here
way.
for a minute while you work with the one that's actually in charge. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I see things in exactly the same way. Um, yeah, it's really interesting. Next thing I want to move on to, just talk a little bit about inflammation
Mhm.
for a minute and how that drives chronic pain.
Yeah.
So how does, in your opinion, how does toxicity and poor elimination contribute to inflammation and ultimately to the day-to-day suffering that people live with? Most people think that pain is purely structural. They might say, my joint is worn out or my back is weak. But what I see every day is that most pain almost always has an inflammatory component, and inflammation is often driven by everyday foods that quietly irritate the gut and stress the immune system. When you remove those triggers, the body calms down and pain levels follow. That's why I created the pain-free plate. 7 foods that naturally help calm inflammation and reduce persistent pain. Get your free guide at bodycheck, that's bodycheck.co.uk/pain free plate. And now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, I think that the toxicity angle, when you're starting it, in my practice, at least when I'm treating patients, that's where I always start. I always start there because you almost have to reverse engineer it. You gotta run it backward. It didn't get in trouble that way. The stuff had to get in first, but once it's in, if the body cannot get rid of it fast enough, then everything gets in trouble.
Mm.
And I've seen this with cancers, Lou Gehrig's, MS, Parkinson's, which are a big part of my practice. I see the toxicity issue all the time.
Mm.
And when stuff gets inside and the body doesn't know what to do with it then has to react to it. And we know that physically, we talked about it gets tense and tight when it reacts. Well, you got muscles inside too, right? There's extrinsic and intrinsic. The ones that hold you up against gravity and the ones that just kind of make all your organs power up and give them what they need. So the whole system reacts to tension, in this case, toxicity. So when poisons and toxins get into the body, we'll use DDT as an example, right? The
Mm.
old pesticide insecticide. The half-life of DDT in the human body is 50 years.
Mm.
So one time of when you're 9, it's in you till you're almost 60.
Mm.
And you think, all right, what's it doing in me? all this time, right?
Mm.
It's a poison, and we all can refer to lead and arsenic and all those kind of things. So you think, all right, this poison gets in me and it circulates and it circulates and it just keeps going around and around until the body can stuff it somewhere. Maybe it's in a fat cell someplace. Maybe it's in an organ tissue someplace. Maybe it never does stuff it somewhere and it just lets it keep going. When it does that, it reacts to it just like poison ivy or poison oak, right? Except it's inside you.
Mm.
And we always talk about, I call it FARSP. It's fever, redness, pain, swelling, and aberrant motion. That's what inflammation really is, right? It gets hot. It can get red, right? It can get swollen, right? It interferes with your movement of things. And then, of course, the pain comes with that. So
Mm.
when you're looking at a toxicity issue, you have to then say, well, how do I get the body to eliminate that toxin? I focus on the liver very, very to almost to an exclusion to some degree.
Mm.
I know that the eliminative organs, the bowel gets rid of what never got in, right? That's what you didn't digest. That's what's in the
Mm.
bowel. But sometimes a lot of people stop there and they think, well, my body will dump it out to the no. Once it digests it, now it's inside you. The bowel
Mm.
can't deal with that. It's just a tube running through you. So now your kidneys have to deal with it, right? They're the primary way out of the body. But if the kidneys are like, look, man, I'm overwhelmed. I can't handle all this flood water. The lungs, the skin, and the sinuses will. And so you can always see eliminative issues by just kind of looking at those core things. And you say, well, my bowels are slow or too fast. Something's irritating it. Has it gotten inside? If it has, well, my kidneys are off. How would you know? You'll get allergies, right? You'll get seasonal ones, especially, or airborne stuff, smokes, perfumes, things like that, the little plugins that people put in. You'll
Mm.
notice you got low back pain for no reason, no trauma, because the kidneys share plugs with all those low back muscles and pelvic muscles, right?
Mm.
You could look for asthma, you could look for bronchitis or emphysema, you'd look for sinus congestion, runny, drippy, or congested, right? Or any skin condition. Eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, just dry skin in general. When you
Mm.
start seeing these patterns, the body's telling you, look, something's out of balance here. You're not in harmony. You're not in rhythm. So then you have to say, well, how do I get it back into rhythm? And you can give the body things. You can use herbals and plants and supplements to help it with this stuff, to deal with histamine reactions and all that. But until you go in and find the stopper in the bathtub and pull the drain, you're just fighting this never ending cycle. So I
Mm.
really focus heavy on the liver because the liver is the filter of the body, right? It's the guy. The lymph goes through it, the blood goes through it, all your digestive things eventually go through it, all medications, all supplements, all cancer cells that are damaged and broken end up going through the liver. So you see all these things going through this little 5-pound fish tank filter. And you look at that and think, all right, what happens if it gets gummed up?
Mm.
Now you start getting fatty liver disease and things of that. And we're seeing right now that fatty liver disease globally has exploded because we're living in a toxic time.
Mm.
And so if you can open the stopper in the tub, get the liver to function better, then the body will start to drain. And then a lot of these, what I call systemic reactions, start to settle down. And the ones that remain are where you then can say, okay, I need to go pay attention here.
What kind of approaches do you use for the liver?
So innervation's the big one first. How does it talk to the brain? Right? Where does it talk? So Henry Head was a neurologist. He won the Nobel Prize for this, actually. He figured out that when an organ system gets in trouble, it will create a muscle contraction above the organ. So you can palpate and touch and
Mm.
feel. Claude Bernard or William McKenzie came along about 20 years later and said, well, you'll also see a muscle contraction in the spinal column because the nerve has to talk to that brain.
Mm.
So you'll get it over the organ and you'll get it where it enters the big cord back there and goes up. So I always start there. I'm like, all right, where is the liver at? You can palpate around it and see if it's ropey or hard, and they'll know. Pain's a wonderful teacher.
Mm.
They'll know in a heartbeat, and they're like, whoa. And then you just follow it back. You trace it back like you're grabbing a phone cord and you run it back to the wall. So you're looking at roughly T4 to T8, really 6, 7, 8 for the liver per day. And ironically, the fourth cervical. They found a direct wire at the fourth cervical that goes to the liver. So you start looking for patterns there. And if you see a tension or anything like that, okay, something is interfering with the signal now between the brain, which is kind of like the front office of a corporation, and all of its subparts. And you then want to release that. And what, in my experience, from what my grandfather taught me and my uncles, it's only going to be one level in this cord that's truly in trouble. Everything else is just adaptations. But there's one level that when the body says, look, I've got a bear that's jumped on me and I'm fighting the bear off, I'm resisting it, I'm going to tighten up, but I'm going to do it in one specific spot primarily. And so then any stress that comes along is going to continue just tightening it down. It's like you're just turning the screws and tightening it and tightening it and tightening it at that level. If you can release the tension at that level, then it's like when I was a child, we used to use soup cans and a string, right, to make little phones.
Mm.
I tell all my patients, I go, this is what's going on. Your brain's got one can, your liver has another, or your elbow or your ankle. The string right now has got a big ball of yarn in the middle of it. And I'm just going to go through there and help you pull this thing out of there. And as I unwind it, it goes taut and everybody talks. So I focus predominantly there first. I release that tension that's choking that off. Then I always turn to supplementation, especially for the liver,
Mm.
right? It's a big deal. I have a product I really, really, really like. It's a blend of milk thistle, chlorella, spirulina, and pine pollen with an enzyme base. And I've had the most remarkable success with that I've ever seen with a supplement so far. It's really phenomenal because it's double dipping. It's binding toxins, poisons, heavy
Mm.
metals. It'll grab all that stuff as it's coming through the liver, but at the same time, it's nourishing the cell. It's giving you all the aminos. It's giving you the B vitamins. But it's doing it in a plant form, so I don't have to worry about, well, if they're not getting it out of their steak, they're not going to pull it out of a pill. If I give them a plant that the body can digest readily, hence why the enzymes are in it, then I don't have to worry about their system being their hands tied or behind the eight ball. So that opens that liver up slowly. It pulls the stopper out of the bathtub and it starts letting that dirty water go down. So now you're supporting it neurologically. You're supporting it on a chemical side of things. And then I always dig into the emotional side.
Mm.
In TCM and traditional Chinese medicine and Taoism, they believe that the liver, all the organs, really are what drive your emotions, right? The mind, the brain, they feel is more of a card catalog of life. But the actual feeling part is issued from the organ tissues. So in that field, and you probably know this, the liver, the gallbladder are really more anger,
Mm.
frustration, right? They affect that. So you'd ask questions, Mrs. Smith, have you been upset? Well, my daughter left, and you start finding a potential cause.
Mm.
And you say, if I can help her with this, I can then release these effects, and the whole body goes boom, and healing starts.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So you start with the structural aspects,
Always.
then the nutritional, and then the emotional. Yeah, nice. Nice. Interesting.
Fun.
Yeah, I don't have any kind of like I always do it this way, I always do it that way.
Yeah.
But you know, what I think is amazing, there's so many people around the world and there's so many different techniques and they're all amazing. Well, not all amazing, some of them aren't amazing, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, no, no,
there are so many amazing systems around there. I mean, about 20 years ago, I studied something called the body talk system. I don't know if you've come across that. It is amazing. I don't practice it anymore, but it is an amazing system. Um, but I've studied so many different other things
Yeah.
that I still use today. And it still amazes me. I've got a whole list of stuff I would love to learn,
Yeah.
because
Oh
I think,
yeah.
I think the old adage is, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's an excellent way to look at things too. Here's the thing when you and I were chit-chatting a little earlier, one of the things that came to me, and again, I'm a martial art nut, right? I'm 40 plus years into it. I've been fortunate to study with some of the top guys in the world, from MMA to combatives. I taught a military, knife and stick and short weapons. So I have a lot of hands-on experience with it. And when it finally dinged in my head that, oh, there's one theme running through all of this. The techniques are just a way to express it, but it's still the one thing. So when my grandfather would practice, he always believed that we were a body, a mind, and a soul. That's just what he believed.
Mm,
And something greater than that animating it and flowing through it. Now, you can call it universe, nature, mother nature, God if you choose. It's everyone's their own thing.
mm,
But it's like, all right, there's a body. I get that. The mind, what is it? It's a communication tool, is what the mind is, right? It's a function
mm,
between what? The conscious and the subconscious. The conscious mind is us. It's our ego, our id. It's who we think we are, right? The
mm.
subconscious is what's really in there running everything.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
not telling, you don't eat a biscuit and go, well, I need 4 blood cells and an eyelash out of that, right? It just knows to do it. And so you're like, all right, I get cut. I don't look at it and go, I need you to heal, heal, heal. It just does it, right? So knowing that there's this energy flowing through this, and it's what carries out all the functions. Once you see that, you really see it, then you literally can make any technique work in any field because you can understand why it works and you can understand why it doesn't
Mm,
sometimes. And then that was a big thing for me. I figured that out about 10 years ago in my practice, because I was chasing techniques all the time, right? You get caught up in it, right?
mm,
You're doing something, it doesn't work for this patient, so you go looking for something that does. And you learn all this cool stuff, and there's lots of cool stuff. Like you said, there's many ways to roam, right?
mm,
Lots of cool stuff. But then you realize, oh, okay, they're all working with the same one thing. So once you see that, then you're like, all right, all I got to do then is learn how to talk to the one thing through that form that's in front of me, that person, that soul that's sitting there. How do I talk to this one thing in them?
mm,
Not the way I want to talk,
mm,
right? And that's where the nice thing about having lots of techniques and things in your bag of tricks is that that person may not respond to this one, but I can pull something else out. So
mm.
Viktor Frank, one of my mentors, always said, learn as much as you possibly can learn. And when you're with the patient, forget it all. And I was like, what? It
Yeah,
didn't make any sense, right?
I
But
get that
then now it
completely.
does.
Yeah,
Now it does. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I get that completely. Yeah, I mean, one of the best books I've ever read, it's one of my favorite books, was The Biology of Belief by Bruce
Oh
Lipton.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Bruce.
And, he talks so well about the subconscious mind and,
Uh-huh.
how about 95 to 99% of all our decisions are made by the subconscious mind.
Uh, uh,
Because, again, without going through the whole story, the first 7 years of life, we're basically, you could say we're being brainwashed, right? Mind controlled. Just because of the way the brain functions, it's like, I showed my age, but you'll relate to this one.
don't
If you,
don't lump me in with you.
but if you've got a recordable CD, right? The
Hmm.
CD doesn't get to decide what gets recorded on it, right? And it's exactly the same thing with a child. The child doesn't really get to choose what gets downloaded into their subconscious mind. They're just trying to survive, right?
Yeah.
They're just trying to do the best they can to survive, whether that's making friends with people and not upsetting people, or, not upsetting their parents, or, whatever it is, that gets hardwired into their subconscious. And then, unless you're fortunate and you work with someone who can, help you rewrite that CD, you're basically running on autopilot. I drive up to Lancashire, which is just over 200 miles from me, a few times a year. And it's amazing how I set off from home and I get to the other end and I think, I don't remember driving on the motorway,
Yeah.
right? Because I might be listening to the radio or whatever, but I don't remember pushing on the accelerator, changing gears, hitting the
Uh-huh.
clutch. Don't remember any of that. Or I might remember what was being spoken about on the radio, or if I was listening to music, what music was playing. But I don't remember driving the car. So who was driving the car? It was my subconscious mind. If you've been living with pain for a while, you've probably felt frustrated, like you're trying lots of things, but nothing really changes. That's because pain rarely comes from one single issue. It's usually biomechanics, nutrition, stress, sleep, lifestyle habits, and your nervous system is all interacting together. When we look at everything as a whole, the pattern becomes clear. If you want help understanding what's driving your pain, you can book a discovery call with me at bodycheck.co.uk. That's bodycheck.co.uk/consultation. All right, back to the episode. All right, so
No, it's excellent. It's excellent. And you made several good points there. Um, I refer to it as a psychic sensor or a psychic barrier. We don't have one in place until that 7, 8-year-old
mm,
point, then it drops, right? So up until that point, you're a sponge
mm,
and you just, so the people that are the most influential in your life, mom, dad, teacher, school, church, if you go, that's who influences you.
mm,
And the challenge becomes, what if something got put down in there that wasn't true? And now you use that. So one of the things I talk about in my practice, again, I'm seasoned like you. Once you get north of 50, we're seasoned. I always think of the old recorders with the tape, right? You
mm,
just hit record and you
mm,
have cassettes. Your mind's got a bunch of those, right? It's got all these recorders in there. And every time, say, for example, you are 4 years old and you had some loss or some sorrow, maybe anger, right? All right, now you're 40 years old and you get a little angry. Something pokes your bear a little bit. Your mind goes, hit recorder number 6, just like it did when you were 4.
mm,
And you respond to it like you did when you were 4, except now you've thrown some adult filters on top of it. So you're not yelling and screaming and throwing a tantrum, but the feeling is the same.
mm,
And it affects the physiology the same way. And it's really fascinating. One of the things I like to do with people, well, like right now is a really good example, right? This is and you said about Bruce and his work in the biology of belief, which is excellent. He's a really great guy. The concept that he's trying to put out there that he's sharing with you is saying, look, your conscious mind is running about 2% of what happens in your day. 98% you're oblivious to,
mm,
right? It's all programs that are being run that you've trained it over time. You don't even know it. And one of the best examples of this, a young lady that taught me years ago said, think about your teeth. She goes, they're in your head all day long. She goes, you don't even notice them, that they're even there until
mm,
someone says, think about your teeth,
mm,
right? So, but your subconscious, it knows where your teeth are. It knows where your tongue's at. It knows what's going on in there. You're not, because it's not important enough for the subconscious to alert you. So it doesn't create a resonance that vibrates up in your sensory perception, so you don't react to it,
mm.
right? It's like when you put your shirt on, you don't feel it after the first 10 seconds,
Yeah.
right? Because it knows, it's not important, turn that sensor down. But if it was important, something's in it,
Mm,
now you're like, "God, what's going on back there?" You know it right away, right?
mm,
You feel it. So it's fascinating how these two things are running all the time, but the subconscious is the one that's really doing the heavy lifting.
mm,
So the question then becomes, what can the conscious mind do that causes the subconscious to have problems. Because if it's running all the time, and it's supposed to be running your organs and your digestion and your joints and your muscles, how do I get pain? How do I get discomfort? Unless I fell off a roof or I poisoned it, how do I get pain for no reason? How do these things show up? Then I, thinking my conscience, got in the way. I interfered with the path that it likes to use.
Mm,
And I created tension. The tension creates resistance, and all of a sudden pick the symptom. And that's where we're at.
mm. Yeah, I remember a situation. It's about 10 years ago, and I was with a friend. I was at home. We were making some dinner, and I think I was chopping some vegetables or something, and she went to the fridge to get something. And now I grew up. So my parents were born during World War II.
Mhm.
So when they grew up, it was all about food rationing, and
Mhm.
you had to really make everything go as far as you could, right? Everything was about saving money.
Oh, yeah.
So when I grew up, even though I wasn't in that same environment, my parents still had that programming in them.
Mhm.
So when I was growing up, if you left the fridge door open for more than 2 seconds, you got screamed at, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm standing there cutting vegetables, and my friends opened the fridge door, left it open, starts doing something else. I can't remember what, but she was doing something else. And I can feel this anxiety just building up in me because she left the fridge door open, right? And I'm thinking, why am I getting so anxious? Why am I getting so anxious? And I thought, just calm yourself. Like, the world's not going to come to an end because the fridge door's open, right?
Yeah.
And then it starts to beep, right? It's been open for a while now. So now it's beeping. And she's just like, yeah, she's chopping away, completely oblivious to this fridge door still being open. And when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, why was I getting so anxious? And it made me realize that's my childhood programming from when I was growing up.
Mhm.
But what the good thing is, I think you were alluding to as well, is if you can consciously catch those subconscious behaviors, then you can do something about it,
Right.
right? Which is kind of what I did. I kind of went, just relax, like not, the world's not going to come to an end because the fridge door is open, right?
Well,
But
that's
it does,
rewriting that CD you were talking about.
yeah,
Now you're rewriting it.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I know a lot of people, sadly, they come to this belief that chronic pain is just something that they're going to have to accept for the rest of their life. From your experience, is lasting relief actually possible? I think I know the answer. And what really makes the difference when someone finally starts healing?
I think that, Thurman Fleet is a big mentor of mine. He and my grandfather were really close, and Fleet used to say that healing works 100% of the time unless you do it wrong. And so I'm like, whoo, there's a bar. It's like, oh. But I believe him. I believe him. I believe that whatever made the body, okay, whatever is driving the bus, it built you from one cell. Somehow you started as one cell,
Hmm.
and that split and became two, and then four and eight and 16 until it got to roughly 50 trillion. You make 330 million cells a minute every day. So I'm like, all right, I have an endless supply of brand new parts as long as I give them the right signal.
Hmm.
That's where Lipton's work is really handy, right?
Hmm.
I give it the right signal. So when someone comes to me with chronic pain of any kind, whether it is an injury, a cancer, something that's unknown to them, I know in the back of my mind, well, you have endless parts, or you wouldn't be breathing right now and talking to me.
Hmm.
That means your potential to heal is endless. So that's my bar. I already know, yeah, I don't care what's wrong with you. I can get you to not hurt. I know it. I'm 100% positive that that will be the result. So knowing that, then all I have to do is figure out what does this person need me to do for them?
mm,
to help them reform that concept in their mind that, yeah, I can get better. Sometimes it's fascination. Sometimes you got to wow them a little bit, right? So they can be, and when they're wowed, you get that quick result, right? That allows you to start building almost like a landing page for something you're trying to sell, right? You got to have something to land on, and then you can build on that. So, in my belief of things, I've never seen a pain condition that I couldn't change with someone. And I'm 25 years into doing this, and never once. And I've seen everything from terminal illnesses of every kind you can imagine to acute traumas and things. I've had people that I've seen gunshot wounds. I've seen surgeries that have been botched. I've watched diseases run through the body, but you can always shut it down because pain, when you really start looking at it on a more intellectual level, it's a thought process more than an actual physical thing, and that's hard for people to grasp sometimes. Emile Couillet's work is phenomenal if you've never looked at it. Um, Couillet was a smart old cat, and he figured out, look, you can shut this thing down now. One of my good friends, when he has dental work done, doesn't use any anesthetic. He's had root canals. He's had one of them he had a fistula repaired surgically, wide awake. Said, "No, I don't need it.
mm,
You're good. Go ahead." I'm like, "Holy cow!" I mean,
mm,
that's intense. And I've done so much research in, with the martial art background, in the Japanese culture especially. They really focus on centering the mind. And if you can center the mind, you can shut pain off.
mm,
And so all of my patients that suffer from chronic pain, you look for the cause, you remove it. You nourish and support body function, right? Try to put everything back the way it belongs. And I always teach them self-help ways that they can shut the switch off on their own. And if it pops back on in 2 hours, okay, shut it off again. And you teach them how to do this. And the more they do it, like any skill acquired, the more you do it, the better and better you get at it. To all of a sudden, man, they're shutting stuff off in seconds instead of minutes or half an hour. So that's really the approach I follow. I think that I've not run anything yet that I couldn't deal with. Phantom pains, limb loss, cancers. I've not run into one yet. I couldn't teach someone, hey, we can turn this thing down and get it where it's manageable for you. And you try to remove the cause and see if you can get it to go away completely.
mm. Yeah, something that I often say to clients, um, up until recently, I think we used to believe it takes about 7 years for bone tissue to turn over. And I
Uh-huh.
think more recently, some people are saying actually it's 2 years. It actually turns over quicker. But whichever is right doesn't matter in this instance. But if someone comes to me and they say, "Well, I've had this pain for 10 years," and I explain to them that there's no cell in your body right now that existed 10 years ago, so why are you still in pain? And it always makes people really think, like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
it's
what?"
great.
Right? Which does kind of show you that there's far more to pain than just the physical body, right? And that's, again, we're talking about the psychology and emotions and the psyche
Yeah.
and, you know.
Well, it's a great approach though, because you're so right on with that. When I first I started in practice with digestive work. That was the focus of my practice, is that I was working on people's digestive problems.
Mm,
Because one of the doctors that mentored me said, look, this is where a lot of it happens, and you can see it
mm,
because elimination is the other end of that tube, and that's where everything's got to get out of you, otherwise you
mm,
inflame. So I spent a lot of time on that, and the lining of the gut was always something that intrigued me. Because at that time, they're like, look, the gut is brand new every 6 weeks. Well, now we know the stomach is brand new every 4 to 5 days.
mm,
They're like, well, then how can you have heartburn?
mm,
If it's brand new every 4 to 5 days, how can you have heartburn? How can that follow through with you? Well, then I came across a gentleman's research recently, and he was talking about this idea, this signal that you're giving the cell to say, hey, I need you to go down there and fix my tummy. If it's got a bad signal in your thinking, when you make these new cells, all you do is give them the bad signal.
mm,
And so they just go right back down and do what the old ones did.
mm.
Well, now it doesn't heal because you're telling the new cells to go there and just do what the old ones did.
Mm,
So again, it's this idea that your conscious mind can get in the way of the subconscious. And most of what you're doing is trying to get people out of their own way. And in the psychological field, you'd be looking at psychoanalysis versus psychotherapy. And therapy is what I always use first. I
mm,
just give them a better idea. Say, look, this is the weed you got. Put something better over it, and it's done. Sometimes you got to go in and dig the root out and find it. With cancers and things in my practice, I've noticed that I have to go find it. I got to go find the cause. Where was this at? And once they see it, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in your little life, right? Once they see it, it's like a light. It's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
mm,
I've had more people turn the corner and heal by just getting an adult version of them to look at when it started and go, well, that was silly. I was 5. But the 5-year-old mind said, hey, this is a tiger jumping on me. A 40-year-old mind's going, it's no big deal.
mm,
And once they come to terms with that, it's like you literally just took all the wood away from the fire and now it just burns itself out. And then you can do all the therapies you want to do to control the discomfort, the pains, whatever's gone wrong because it's been burning for so long.
mm.
And it's really it's a lot of fun. A lot of
Yeah,
fun to help people that way.
yeah, yeah. A common myth I still hear, even from professionals, is that diet has nothing to do with chronic pain. And that's simply not true. Your gut and your immune system influence inflammation, hormones, energy, and yes, pain. If you're eating foods that drive inflammation, it's almost impossible to feel better long term. The Pain Free Plate gives you 7 foods that help settle your system and support lasting relief. You can download it at bodycheck.co.uk. That's bodycheck.co.uk/pain free plate. Now, let's get back to the conversation. So, you've spoken a little bit about the liver and how you help the liver. You've just spoken about digestive system. But I think generally, I'm sure you'd agree, nutrition is often just not even considered when it comes to pain.
Yeah.
How do you use supplements and diet to support, the body's natural ability to calm inflammation, reduce pain, and also to repair?
Yeah, always anti-inflammatory. You get as anti-inflammatory with the diet as you possibly can. You look for foods that really, really spark the body to kick back against it. And we all know them, right? You know them. You drink a bunch of milk or this or that, you get phlegmy, right? And it's not all right, but that's not really a great reaction that you want. I'm not saying don't drink milk, but it's like, okay. Grains historically are highly, highly acidic in their nature, right?
Mm,
So they can really irritate things. And in my experience, lung condition. Man, I haven't seen an asthmatic child or something like that doesn't have trouble with grains. And people are like, well, it's wheat. Now it's not just wheat, it's all of them. It's the oats. They all struggle with them. And it's just a processing issue, right? It's how the body chooses. And we've tinkered with our food chain so much that your body hasn't had time to adapt to it. So when it comes to the diet, I try to think low and slow is a good rule, right? When we all overeat, right? It's just renowned. We have Thanksgiving coming up in the United States here in the near future. Everyone's going to eat and put themselves in a food coma, right? They'll be laying there and they're going to flood the engine, right? And the body's going to be like, look, I can't use this. And yet every one of them, after they finally wake up from their nap, because the body's going to shut them down, saying, look, there's too much here. Shut everything off. Let's deal with it. They're going to wake up and every one of them is going to go in that kitchen and start picking. And they'll get just enough when they pick to start the motor again.
mm,
All right, but what did it do with all that fuel you put in there? It's got to throw it away. So from a dietary standpoint, I've always been a big fan of fasting, right? A big fan of fasting. Long before fasting has become the trend, it's become in the last probably 4 or 5 years. I've been doing it for almost 30, right? Because every religion on the planet recommends fasting. They all do. And you look at them, you think, all right, why? What's going on in that thing? And one of my Stephen Buhner and I were worked together a lot. He was an herbologist. and a brilliant, brilliant herbologist. And Stephen wrote a wonderful book on fasting. And when he and I were talking about it one time, he's like, look, he goes, you have to. You have to. Because he goes, the body needs time to clean itself up. And when you start looking at history, if you go back 10,000 years, all right, or 5,000 years even, in humankind, we didn't eat 3 meals a day.
Mm,
That's modern marketing, right?
mm,
We didn't do this. That all came about in the last couple hundred years. We would eat once a day,
mm,
maybe once every couple or 3 days, like a lot of the other animals on the planet do, unless you're a grazer. And we're not a grazing animal. Humans just
mm,
aren't designed to be that way. We can do it, but it's not our forte. So I always focus on this idea of, okay, I need to fast a little bit. And I have different methodologies that I follow. You can't do the same fast for everyone.
mm,
So a lot of times I'll say, look, let's just dump breakfast out for a while. Just do lunch and supper and put it in a 6 hour window. Try to be done with it and give the body all that time to clean up and stabilize your insulin and your blood sugar. With my diabetics, I'm much more strict about it. I'll start there with them and then I'll work up the next. I'll do it in 2 week increments. And then after 2 weeks, I'll pull out the lunch and we'll go dinner only. And I usually do that for 9 to 10 days. And then I'll have them do a hard fast for 2 to 3 full days after that, water only.
mm,
I've not seen a diabetic in my career. I couldn't get non-diabetic. All right, it works on all of them. So now they're not a victim to this condition anymore. And you'll learn that when you start fasting, because nutrition is really 3 Ds and an E. It's diet, how you digest the diet, that's pulling it in and using it, how you then detoxify what you used, and then how you eliminate it.
mm,
When you are fasting, there's no diet, there's no digestion. All the body does then is detoxify and eliminate. That brings you back around to that liver, right? It's got to be able to get rid of it for you. So
mm,
if you can help the body do this, it does remarkable with it. I have a patient that was working with the head of Stanford University's oncology department, and we were talking about fasting because she's doing really, really well. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, my doctor's got me fasting." He says, he goes, "We haven't put this into literature yet." But he goes, we've found here at Stanford that if you will fast for 7 days once you've had cancer, it decreases the recurrence of cancer by 70%. That should be in every oncology center in the world,
mm,
right? Everywhere.
mm,
So you learn that if you're not feeding the body, it will look around and say, well, what's here to burn? What can we throw in the furnace right now to keep the heart running, the lungs working? And so it starts, well, grab this old chair, throw it in there. Grab this bacteria, throw it in there. Grab that virus, throw it in there. Oh, you see that inflamed knee over there? Let's take all those damaged proteins and throw it in there. And all of a sudden the inflammation starts to peter out of there. I've never seen in my practice, and never is a big word, maybe 3 or 4 times in my practice, I've seen an arthritic condition in a patient that was trauma induced. The lion's share of them are not.
mm.
Got bad knees, bad hips, bad
Yeah.
wrists, bad elbows, an arthritic spine, but they didn't play pro football. And I'm like, all right, well, then how did you get this? It's a toxicity.
Mm,
The body gets inflamed and poisoned and it reacts. So when you clean up the diet, then wonderful things happen. Then you supplement what the body cannot do with the diet alone. You say, well, they don't like these things. I'm not eating this, or it's not. All right, then I'm going to supplement that in there. And I'm a big enzyme fan. I really like enzymes. I taught the work to doctors for 20 years. I like the work because enzymes are a key component of the body. They do work, right? Build and repair, and they are your immune system. So if you can put the right enzymes in, then all of a sudden the body's like, wow, I got all these extra helpers that can now start tearing down the inflammatory wall over here and allow new things to get in and build and repair. So I do a lot of that, and I tend to focus myself around herbals and plants more so than vitamins and minerals, right? I'd rather, if you need B vitamins, I want to give you the foods that it's
mm,
in a blended way that the body will be more kind to than more of a pharmaceutical concept.
mm.
And it's seemed to work for me really well over the years.
Yeah, yeah. So when you were talking about enzymes, you're talking more kind of proteolytic enzymes. So
For sure.
between meals rather than, I mean, you might be saying digestive enzymes as well,
Uh-huh.
but
Uh-huh.
certainly you're talking more about the proteolytics. So they're going to mop up all the
Yeah,
debris
and the
in the
nice thing
body.
about proteolytics is the pH range. See, when you get into the animal-based ones, the pancreatine, things of that nature, their pH range is so narrow that if there's anything wrong in the system, they won't activate until it's too late. So I really focus on the proteolytic ones because their pH activation range runs from about 3 to 9. That'll cover almost any part of the human body. And so they'll activate in the stomach, they'll activate in the intestinal tract, they'll activate all the way through, where the animal-based ones aren't going to kick in until they're already into the small intestine somewhere. And it's too late now because you've already gone through big chunks of what needed to be done. You missed it. So I found that over the years, much, much better success with that.
Mm,
And you can get your proteases, your amylase, your cellulase, you can get all of that out of most plant sources. There are a few that aren't. In my experience with cancers, for example, you have to use animal-based ones. The plant ones don't seem to have the punch that the animal ones do.
mm,
And I'm not sure exactly as to why. It just that's my experience with it over the years.
mm.
But yeah, I
So
love them. I love them. But they're not the end all be all. They're a piece. They're a
yeah,
step on that ladder, not the whole ladder.
yeah. And are there any specific proteolytic enzymes that are kind of like your favorites to recommend?
So I use a lot of enzyme formulations company. That's the company I use. Howard Loomis came up with it. He was the first one that ever did it. Everyone that makes a product that's out there today, Wobenzyme, all these different groups, Howard either made their formulas for him or for them, or they took his classes and he taught them how to do it. So he's really the pioneer in the field. When you're looking at pain, the two that come to mind the most, protease in some form or another, and probably the amylases in one form or another. I found in my career that if someone has, say, for example, a staph infection, like a MRSA, amylase will knock it out faster than any drug I've ever seen.
Mm,
It's fascinating to watch. I've watched ulcerated wounds the size of a softball just close up. Bed sores, things of that, and it just close right up. The proteases are really, really, really good at breaking down damaged protein. So they tend to work really well on joint pain, joint
mm,
inflammation, stiffness, things of that nature. The plant world, from like the bromelain, the papain that you see all the time, that's what everyone's after. The temperature's wrong. So the bromelain, it doesn't activate till about 140, 145 degrees. That's why you see it in fancy restaurants on the steak, right? They put it on there on the steak, and man, that steak you can cut with a fork because it's already eaten most of the steak. It's broke all the protein bonds, but you're never 145.
mm,
And papain doesn't activate till around 115. So it's like, all right, so if they do anything in the body, it's very limited in what it can do because it just never gets the temperature it needs. It's kind of like putting a bouillon cube in cold water. You come back in a month, you got a semi-solid bouillon cube sitting in cold water. You heat it, and man, it'll do all, you got a soup, right? So it's the same thing with enzymes. The proteolytics, because they work in body temperature and body pH. It's like a bouillon cube being boiled. It really does wonders. The other ones don't seem to have that effect. So like bromelain and papain are the two that come to mind right away because you use them all the time as anti-inflammatories. And they do have some effect, but not even close to what the other ones do.
mm. Yeah, yeah. So my final question for you, just to kind of leave the audience with a sense of hope.
Mhm.
Can you maybe share the story that stands out most to you of someone that's come to you in pain? Possibly, it could have been pain for a long time. They felt like there was no solution,
Yeah.
but they came to see you and you managed to help them. What would be the most kind of outstanding story for you?
So, I'll give you two that come to mind right away that I've seen recently. I got a young boy. We play football in the United States, not soccer, but we call it football, right? His team's in state at the state level. They're going to the state playoffs. They're good. He's a big boy. He's 6'4", 260. He's a good sized kid. And he got hit in the lower leg from the side. And they thought there's probably a stress fracture in the lower leg, but he wants to play. And my thing was, and it hurts. There's tremendous pain. And so I thought, okay, if I really believe in what I'm saying, then I should be able to help the body get past this pain, break or not. So they did X-ray, they looked at it, they're not sure. I'm like, hey, that's all I need. Not sure is doubt. So I'm like, all right, there's doubt. I can use that then to break his belief. Uh-oh, my leg's broken. I said, well, they think it might be, but they didn't say it was. And so you work from there. The body has to do this to react to it. So I got to find that one level in that big electrical cord that reacted. I found the level. And when I had treated that young man, I would then every time I would adjust him or I'd manipulate the muscles around it. As soon as I'd feel a change, I'd say, there it goes, see? I'd trace it down the leg so he could make a connection to it. I'd adjust. There it goes, see? Do three, four, five different things and always take it to that leg. Then I do a technique called MMR, which is muscle memory reintegration. And I reconnect the conscious mind to the muscle, not just the tissue around it. And I started looking for muscles that didn't work, right? He stressed it, body tripped a breaker, blew a fuse. All right, who's turned off down here? So you find a calf muscle, right? You find, in his case, I think the articularis genu, which moves the kneecap, was out of way.
Hmm.
You know, the
Hmm.
the popliteus behind the back of the knee had shut down. Turn them back on, right? That gives him stability and strength. And then I said, look, buddy, I've got this protease enzyme I'm going to give you. We call it trauma, TRMA. I'm going to give you this. I want you to take this thing. And every time you take it, know what it's doing. It's like a little Pac-Man. It's going down there and it's eating all those little damaged cells out of the way. So I've given him a physical thing. I've given him a tangible thing. I've connected a mind thing to it. I've given him a supplement to take that says, when you take this, here's what's going to happen. And then I taught him a self-pain technique. And I go, it's a little theater, right? So I'm old school Mr. Miyagi, Karate Kid, and I'm like, I'm rubbing my hand, rubbing my hand, and I set it on his leg where it's hot, and I hold his hand. And I said, do you feel it? He's like, yeah. I go, your brain now has a phone line directly to here. And I go, I just want you to breathe with me. So I have him breathe and relax, breathe and relax. I go, do you feel the warmth? It should be getting warmer, warmer. Yeah, I feel it. Oh my gosh. I go, that's everything healing. It's healing now, and it's going to continue to heal. Young man got up off the table, walked pain-free. I mean, he limped into the office, walked pain-free, right? He's now played one game. He's coming back. I'm just tuning him up, but he's playing now. And fracture or no fracture, this young man's playing on this leg of his own accord. He's protecting it, but he's able to do it. That's phenomenal, right? That's acute care, quick fix. My chronic pain, I had an older gentleman that I used to see that was worried about losing his memory. He was just terrified of dementia and Alzheimer's. And so I worked on him. He goes, well, I got a buddy of mine I'm going to send in to you. Now, this guy was 85. So I'm like, all right, how old's your buddy? Right? I'm thinking he's not going to be 20. So his buddy comes in. He's also 84 or 5 years old. He's like, well, I got terrible back pain. And I said, all right, let's look at it. Let's see what your back pain looks like. Let's get an x-ray. It looked like a cyclone, the spine did. There was more arthritis and curvatures and turns. I've never seen a spine like this. And I thought to myself, my God, man, I can't help you.
Mm.
Look at this thing. But then I remembered Vic saying, look, if you don't try, how do you know? I said, all right, come on, lay down. And so I started working on him. Balance the body. I did an old Celtic bone setting technique where you release the tension points as you go along because I couldn't get in there and, you can't. So I'm doing a Celtic technique that you release the bone setting. I'm releasing all of that. I changed his diet up, not radical because he's 80 some years old and wouldn't. And
Mm.
I'm like, all right, will you drink more water? We at least do that, 64 ounces a day would be good if you will for me. So I got him to do that, and I just started releasing these things. And I went through very much the same pattern I did with the young man. And he came back in, and when I asked him, how's your pain doing? When we started, he goes, I'm a 10 out of 10. I'm miserable. I'm drugged to the hilt. Okay. He came to me, it was probably 2 months, and he came up one morning and said, I want to thank you. I said, for what? And he goes, I'm maybe a one today. I haven't been a one in 30 years. And he goes, I'm not taking any more meds.
Mm.
He goes, I don't care if you ever get it all the way down. He goes, my entire life has changed. That's the cool part about doing what we do.
Mm.
And you see it all the time, right?
Mm.
That's what makes this worth doing. You help someone get back on the path to living a real life again. This is a man, when I looked at that x-ray, I'm thinking, brother, whew, there is nothing I can do for this. And the thing that made him said, silly, I'll show you. And sure enough, this guy's life just completely changed. It was one of the coolest, most empowering moments I'd ever had in practice. It was a wonderful feeling. And
Mm.
the joy that he had from it was phenomenal. And he was so thankful. It was
Mm.
neat, great to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. Just as you said it, I was well, just before you said it, I was thinking to myself, and that's why we do what we do.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
it,
you
brother.
said it.
That, that's it, man.
But yeah, it's an amazing feeling when you can help someone like that. It's truly amazing. So, Sean, what's next for you?
I've got a lot going on. I just wrote a book.
What's it
It's
called?
what's that?
Just remind us what it's called.
Yeah, men are the cause of all disease. And of course, I don't have one sitting in front of me. But I wrote a book called Men Are the Cause of All Disease, and it's really my journey, how I got into it, and the problems I see in our current healthcare system, and then what can you do to help yourself? There's a lot of great books out there on self-help and things like that. I didn't want to get into their field. I wanted to say, look, if you're at home, what can you really honestly do without knowing any better?
Mm.
And in my practice, I had a gentleman that I just acquired as a new patient. He's an older gentleman, and he read the book. And he said, I'm here because I read your book. And he goes, your book explains to me what you're about to do. And I thought that was pretty cool, and so I've got that going on. It's been a big part of me. I have started playing with some supplement lines that I'm playing with and creating. Uh, because when I go looking for stuff and I can't find it, I'm like, all right, I'll just make it.
Mm.
I taught for Dr. Loomis for probably 17, 18 years, and he's the pioneer in enzyme therapy. And so I understood herbology a lot with him. I mentioned Stephen a little while ago. He helped me with my first product that I put together. And I looked at the body and I said, okay, how many systems does it have? Right? We can debate and pull it apart, but really you got a glandular hormonal system. You have an eliminative system. You have a nervous system. There is a digestive system, a musculoskeletal, and really a circulatory. Everything falls under those six. So I thought, all right, if I were a patient, what do I want to do? I don't want to take stuff. I'm okay taking something, but I don't want to take 20 somethings. I want to try to limit that. So I thought, is there something I could make that would cover all six of the systems in someone that's not in a lot of trouble?
Mm.
And that's what I did first. I made a formula for that. And then I thought, okay, where now? let's look at the 6 systems. Let's make something for each one of those. My grandfather was friends with a guy by the name of Royal Lee back in the day.
Mm.
And so I had a lot of my grandpa's notes and things because my grandfather was into nutrition and herbals and plants. So Lee helped him with stuff. Dr. Thurman Fleet was friends with Royal Lee. And so Lee helped him with things. So I have a lot of this background that I could draw from in creating stuff. Digestive enzymes, there's a million of them out there. I don't have to recreate that.
Mm.
There's lots of them that work and so on. But when you get into the nervous system, there really aren't many products that are designed to stop the high highs and the low lows. There's not a lot that brings it back to the middle. The Bach flower therapies help a little, but there's not a lot out there. So I'm like, all right, let's put something together for that, to support that. And I really just try to help people take the least amount they can, get their life back in order, and go from there. So that's really what I've been up to and doing. I
Mm.
also run a urine test that I do. It's a main focus of my practice. I call it an integrated urinalysis panel. It's a way for me to see, because your body's throwing that away all the time, right? So blood work's great, but it's a damage assessment. It tells you what's already broken. I
Mm.
want to get ahead of it.
Mm.
Where is it breaking next? And so I use this test, and I'm getting ready to take that to consumer here, really in the next several months. And that'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. And where can people find you online? Where can people get your book,
Yeah,
etc.?
yeah, yeah. Amazon is where the book's at. You can go on Amazon. If you can't get it on Amazon, for one reason or another, you can call the office and we can send books out. I'm on Facebook a lot. I do a lot on Facebook. I'm on McCaffrey Health. .com is my webpage. Dr. Sean on Instagram. I'm on there. I do a weekly radio show on Saturday mornings, and I do a weekly podcast on Saturday mornings, and I also do one on Wednesdays. So I'm really kind of all over the place.
Mm.
McCaffreyhealth.com, and then really all those other places.
Awesome. And I'll make sure there are links in the show notes.
Yeah, thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Sean, thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed chatting with you today. It's been good fun, but it's been really informative as well. So just thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it a lot. It's nice to be able to share it with people.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it from Sean and me for this week. But be sure to join me, same time, same place, next week on Beyond the Pain. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Pain. If this episode resonated, please follow the show, leave a review, or share it with someone you know who's been struggling. And remember, pain is not permanent. With the right insight and support, you can turn it into power. Until next time, stay open, stay strong, and keep moving beyond the pain.